Thanks for tuning in to Written on the Edge, Season 7, Episode 46. I'm Vance Bastian here with my co-host, S.A. Baz Collins,
Howdy.
or Mini Pearl. And we're really glad you're here with us. On today's show, R.L. Merrill has joined us to discuss hippie vampires. That's right, you heard me, hippie vampires. We're going to follow that with a review of the Winchesters, and then Baz and I will share what's held our attention this week. So if you like hearing updates from queer content creators, support us on Patreon, hit our merch store, follow us on YouTube, do all the stuff that shows you love us. But now, on to our guest. Whether she's writing contemporary romance featuring quirky and relatable characters, or diving deep into the paranormal and supernatural to give readers a shiver, R. Merrill loves creating compelling stories that will stay with readers long after. Award-winning Rose spends every spare moment improving her writing craft and striving to find that perfect balance between real life and happily ever after. She writes diverse and inclusive romance, contributes paranormal hilarity to Robin Peterman's Magic and Mayhem universe, and pens horror-inspired music reviews for HorrorAddicts.net. You can find her connecting with readers on social media, advocating for America's youth, raising two brilliant kids, or headbanging at a rock show near her home in the San Francisco Bay Area. Ro, welcome to the show.
Hi guys, how are you?
Doing well, doing well. I should say welcome back to the show. This is not your first rodeo.
I'm so happy to be back.
So for folks who haven't heard the first interview, and Basil, fly a link for it up here, just give a quick how you became a writer, like where all of these passions came together on the page.
Well, the long story, there's the long story and the short story. The short story is I was an educator for 27 years. That should just be all I have to say, right? I was an educator for 27 years. In 2009, I got super sick and had to go on disability for a bit. And when I recovered, I was very bitter and angry and frustrated, and it just started coming out. I just started writing a story that was meant to be, if I had the perfect life, if everything went well for once, and it turned into my the first book that I wrote, which was not the first book that I published. It turned out to be Healer, which came out in 2020. But the first book I published came out in 2014. 2 days from now, we're recording this on the 12th. On the 3rd, tomorrow is my 8-year published versary.
Congratulations.
So, thank you.
And thank you for celebrating that with us.
Yeah.
All right. So you've been teasing me for like a week now with the hippie vampires. Tell me about Sundowners. What am I missing here? Okay.
So Sundowners was the book that I was not supposed to be writing. The first year of the pandemic, I started it, and I love vampires. I love Dracula. I'm not a huge fan of the Gary Oldman movie. That's just me. It's beautiful to look at, but I'm the original. Give me Bela Lugosi any day. So I had always said I would never write vampires unless I had something interesting to say or something different. I mean, I grew up spending a ton of my time in Santa Cruz. So like the Lost Boys came out when I was in high school. And so, I really have it's always been a part of me, but I never felt the right. And then all of a sudden I started coming up with some ideas that were like, well, what if they're not supernatural creatures? What if somebody managed to harness the life energy that humans contain and that they express: anger, fear, sexuality, happiness. And that is how we ended up with people who lived off of other people. So you might call it an energy vampire, although as much as I love Colin Robinson, I had not watched any of that until after I wrote the book. It was more this idea that, like, during the 70s, we had a bunch of very disenfranchised hippies that, were tired of the drugs in San Francisco, and they wanted to find that nirvana or that like enlightened experience. And a bunch of them moved to the Santa Cruz Mountains and started up communes, right? If you've read Mark Vonnegut's book about his experience with schizophrenia, he actually left the hippie movement and moved into a commune in the 70s. And so in the 70s, it was definitely, everybody was trying to find more, whether it's the, the elixir of life, or being a better person, or living, a peaceful existence. And so I started thinking, well, what if that's where my gay hippie in 1968 eventually ended up? And what if when he finally was initiated into this practice, this cult, that it turned out to be not what he thought it was going to be? And now it's 7 years later, or how, and he's trying to figure out how to continue existing long enough to get back at the people who wronged him and the people that he cared about.
Right. Now, and stop me if I'm spoiling it, but you've also worked in a healthcare aspect to his character.
Yes. So the title Sundowners is inspired, I guess is not necessarily the right thing, but if any of you have ever had a family member dealing with dementia or Alzheimer's or any of those terrible afflictions, the afternoon, the dusk time, the early evening is when a lot of their anxiety peaks, and their behavior changes, and they're uncomfortable, they're angry, they become stronger than they necessarily would be, and then they kind of peter out after the sun goes down. Well, my vampire, which he doesn't call himself that until later in the story, and that's a whole thing, he has found that being around people is necessary because he needs the energy, but that particular type of energy feeds him very, very well. Mm-hmm. And he in turn acts as like a recycling plant, and he is able to take in that negative energy and send out healing energy to his patients. So he's been a night nurse for the 50 years since he left the cult. And so now it is present day. He's been traveling around trying to find the people that, the people who mutinied and destroyed the people that he was in the cult with. And he ends up back in Santa Cruz. And I had so much fun with it because, of course, if you're going to put vampires in Santa Cruz, you have to give a little wink, wink. And do you know that I actually learned that the murder capital of the world was actually a thing? They actually called Santa Cruz that because when Ed Kemper, the serial killer, and Mullins, I can't remember his first name, there were two serial killers operating at the same time in Santa Cruz. And so bodies were literally showing up every couple of days. And they did call it the murder capital of the world. I thought that was just from the movie.
Yeah.
But it was actually the case. And so like there's a few little like, Easter eggs, I guess, if you're a Lost Boys fan, that I kind of dropped in. And then so he ends up back in Santa Cruz, and I found this beautiful, beautiful, like, when you're searching for settings for your book, like I was looking for kind of a big old Victorian building that would have been perfect for the nursing home. And it just so happened that there was one of the most beautiful nursing homes or Victorian buildings in Santa Cruz was on Zillow, and like I was able to kind of go through all of the whole inside and kind of have a
self-guided tour.
Yeah. So, and there is actually a very beautiful nursing home that is in the vicinity of where this takes place, a memory care place, and so
nice.
A lot of things came together.
Well, yeah, and so then while he's working there, enter the love interest.
Enter angry, bitter grad student Roman San Angelo, who returns back from a semester in Spain. where he's been doing research on another cult because, of course, his area is criminal psychology with an emphasis in cults.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And
That's cool.
yeah, so he's been doing research in Spain. He had a bad breakup. He comes home and finds out that his aunt and uncle have had to put his beloved grandmother who raised him into Puesta del Sol, the facility. And he's very angry about it because he thinks he should be the one to take care of her. And honestly, even though he knows better, it's just in the Filipino culture, it's absolutely not okay. You keep your parents with you, you keep your grandparents and you take care of them. And so he's struggling with that. But his uncle is a police officer and his aunt is a detective with the local police department. And so they can't take her in. They know that he needs to finish his graduate degree and get his PhD because that's what grandmother wants. So he's kind of stuck, and then he goes in, and then of course he meets this totally charming nurse, and he's doesn't want to like the guy, but he sees how happy he makes everybody that works at the place. So he kind of begrudgingly has to admit that, yeah, he thinks he's kind of cool.
Very nice. And what a wonderful set of skills to bring to the mystery.
Yes. Yes. And again, this was a book that I started. I had sort of a loose idea, and then I had to change a lot of it. It was 2020 and I was writing this during the summer, and that was not a time to have a main character who was a police officer.
Right.
And I didn't want to write that. I didn't think anybody would want to read it. And so originally Roman was supposed to be a police officer.
Okay.
And then about a year later, again, I was supposed to be working on something else. I had made some business decisions that I was going to write only this, but the story just kept. And so I just put everything else aside and I revamped it and rewrote it, and it made me happy. And during the last couple of years, that was really important.
That's super important.
Yeah.
And I love hearing authors say they're happy about their works.
Yeah. Well, it was fun, and I immediately finished it and wanted to start on the second book, but of course I had to get back to what I was supposed to be writing.
Obligations.
Yeah, and I'm even still in the same spot. I was like, okay, I'm writing it for NaNoWriMo, and I had something else I had to write first, and of course I didn't finish that. So I'm actually working on 2 books right now during Nano. Like I write on one during the day and I write on the other at night, and
That's fantastic.
it would be if COVID hadn't happened in my house. And so my energy, like this is the best time of day at about noon. I start fading.
Right.
And I have to have a little lie down. And then I start back up in the afternoon if I can. But some days it's just, that's it. Game over.
Right.
So.
Well, so Sundowners came out in September, so it's out selling everywhere. People can pick it up now.
Yes.
Anything else you want to tell us about it?
It is a planned trilogy at the very least with these 2 main characters. I had written a trilogy before where I followed the same couple through the whole thing. And it was one of my favorite ones to write just because you really have time to get in there and discover the things that they don't want to tell you about themselves. And you kind of gloss over some of those little problems when you're trying to wrap up a plot. Well, the plot is way bigger than one book anyway. And so they will definitely be back. And I will say that the first book definitely ends with a happily for now.
Nice.
I did have a couple of folks who added in their comments, I wish I would have known this was a cliffhanger. And it's like, it's not really a cliffhanger because the part of it wraps up at the end and our couple is happy, but obviously not everything's resolved because I'm not finished yet. So
because life.
because cults and powerful
cults and
beings.
conspiracies and
Yes.
nice.
What are you gonna do?
Read it, obviously. All right. Well, what's up next for you? I know you've teased us that you're writing 2 books during Nano. What else is coming up?
Yes. Well, definitely working on Sundowners #2. I joined up with a group of about 50 authors, and we formed the Happily Ever After Collective. And it's a group on Patreon. 4 novellas are released every month that share a common trope. All diverse, all inclusive. There's main characters who are people of color, queer, all the pairings, thruples, whatever you want. And my first book is what I'm finishing right now. And I can't tell you the trope because it's a secret, but I can tell you that it is a female-female story, and it will be out in March. And then I have a second novella that's coming out in July as part of that. And I've also joined another group that was the brainchild of Ari McKay. And it is based around a mystical carnival of mysteries. And so my contribution to that, and those are actually full-length novels. And mine is coming out in September. So those are 3 I know for sure are coming out next year. Probably Sundowners 2, probably 1 more book at least.
Nice.
That's the hope.
Where is the best place for people to follow your updates so they can get the links for all of these coming works?
Definitely my newsletter, which you can subscribe to on my website, rlmerrillauthor.com. BookBub, you can get all the latest releases that way. Yeah, those are probably the best places.
All right. Any final words of wisdom?
Oh, I didn't know I was going to have wisdom.
She's all, oh God, I got to be smart too.
Yeah, come on. You're asking a lot, remember. Say words of wisdom. Take care of yourself, for real. Eat decent. I'm not going to say eat right because I'm not doing that either. Eat decent, exercise, even if it's just to walk outside your house and stand in the sun and get your vitamin D. Write what you love, read what you love, not what people are telling you should do. Find a balance between your Netflix habit and other things you're supposed to be doing. And drink all the water. I'm telling you, I drink probably about 6 of these full of water every day. It's a lot, but I don't know. Is that wise enough? Thank you. See?
It is perfectly wise. Thank you so much.
Because I fumbled through everything, so let me do the fumbling, and so you don't have to.
All right, folks, we'd like to extend a huge thank you to R.L. Merrill for being with us. Ro, thank you so much, especially for doing this on like the tail end of your own COVID experience. Thank you.
Well, I survived.
Well, good. We at Written on the Edge are proud to introduce you to new media by queer content creators. So if you enjoy learning about these artists, like, subscribe, buy merchandise, keep our lights on, but please follow for new episodes. Now, on to our review. It was awesome catching up with Ro. She's fantastic.
Absolutely.
All right, let's move on to our review this week of The Winchesters, a sort of franchise reboot of Supernatural on the CW.
Yeah, which is going to be kind of scary because CW is going through some major changes, so a lot of shit's getting canceled. I'm like, okay,
and that's getting canceled.
Are we only going to get 5 episodes?
Paramount is buying a lot of their franchises, so I don't know where things are going to go.
Yeah, it's gonna be weird. I don't. Yeah. So
However, for those of you who don't know what the series is about, as I said, it's a continuation of the franchise. It's more of a prequelization of the
the
franchise in that
prequel. Yeah.
the story is all about John, the father to the boys in the original series, and how he meets Mary, their mother, and their lives as young hunters.
Yeah.
Dun dun dun.
Dun, dun, dun.
Um, I'm going to dive into what I thought first
Go ahead.
because
Go ahead.
I'm still mulling it. Back when Supernatural came out, Monster of the Week was a very common storytelling type, in that there was very little character growth. You could sit down and watch an episode. You didn't need to see the episodes before it. You didn't need to see the episodes after it. They were all fairly standalone. And near the end of the series, that's when they
Well,
started
they had
working in.
Monster of the Week for a while.
Yeah. And then near the end of the series, they started working in some things where you had to see an early episode to understand a later episode.
Well, that actually happened starting season 5 when the angels and the demons
Right.
became a thing.
Later
Then you
seasons.
had to watch. So it's season 5 to season 15. So it was 10 years where you really had to do it.
Um, and this series is like a hybrid of the two storytelling types, where the character specific stuff you kind of have to see from one episode to the next, but until you get to episode 4, it's very Monster of the Week.
Mm.
And in episode 4, they finally introduce a mastermind. I'm not going to spoil that. But I'm starting to wonder now if they're finally going to make it a little more modern in that you have to watch one episode to understand the next one.
Yeah, they tend to do, like I said, the last 10 years of the show was of Supernatural
Hmm.
was very, very angels and demons and God focused.
Yep.
So the whole thrust became the brothers being kind of along the lines of one was actually destined to be the vessel of Lucifer, and one was destined to be the vessel of the archangel Raphael. Um, so it was kind of like a serialized good versus evil, that you had monsters floating in, but they were no longer the focus. It was really about the biblical epic proportions of brother pitted against brother,
Hmm.
and how the two brothers were trying to fight against it all, from happening. Um, the show has a tradition of being very queer friendly. There was a
Although
running.
I often, in the original Supernatural, I often felt like it was more of a joke than friendly. I mean, sometimes it was a wink, nod, nudge to the audience, but
Well, I don't know about that, because they did have queer characters that were in there. They had two hunters that the brothers
true, true.
hunted with that were a gay couple, and so, but the wink and the nudge really was born out of fanfic, and
Right.
they actually wrote it into the show as part of the show. So all of the women who love to do their male romance fanfic shit did shit with the brothers, and the brothers were, but not because it was gay, but more like, my brother, are you crazy? So, you know,
But again, where the Winchester differs, it's not a joke. Carlos is a very realized character.
yeah, 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 and
Um,
he's unapologetic.
yep.
Um, he,
At one point, he's talking to John's mother, and he comes right out to her face.
yeah,
It was beautiful. I loved it.
yeah, and he said it with the man bun.
He, well, because he was in uniform heading to an event, I will say. Um,
Right.
but yeah, I am enjoying it. My one hesitation, I think, is just that the cast hasn't gelled yet. So
Yeah.
sometimes it feels like they're acting to each other instead of with each other.
Right. Um, I here's a couple of things that I am struggling with.
Hmm.
One, my husband and I both agree that the writing is not up to par with Supernatural. Obviously, when Supernatural ended, you don't know what happened to the bevy of writers that they had. They may have already had gigs after
Hmm.
they knew Supernatural was closing, because the boys announced it mid season 14 that season 15 was going to be their last. So, as gig economy works, you start hunting for a job the moment you get notice. So you start working towards going elsewhere. I haven't really paid attention of whether or not we're going to see, you know, any of the writers are the same or the same caliber.
Hmm.
I think that they don't have a grasp on two things. This is where I'm critical about the show. They don't have a grasp fully on how things were. Okay, let me back up. There is an episode and I'll put it up here. There is an episode of Supernatural where the boys go back in time because blank on his name.
John
Castiel. Castiel sends him back, sends Jensen Ackles'
Nicholas.
character back in time to see his father, grandfather, mother, blah, 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 and how they met, which I think was brilliantly cast. I don't know why they didn't use any of those actors in this series because it takes place around the same time. So it's kind of like, okay, what's going on here? I also have a problem in that the actors they did settle on for Mary and John look nothing like the actors who play their parents. And I'm like, okay, so she's already a young adult, like early 20s, and she's way shorter than John. And does John lose like 7 vertebrae and become shorter when he's the top? I mean, how are we reconciling this? It's just like they've completely ignored canon and did this. I'm like, what happened to the dude who played your father before?
Well, how many years
He
ago
was
was that?
shorter.
Yeah, but
And
how
he
many
can
years
match.
ago was that? Because he probably no longer looks the
Well,
right age.
maybe 8 or 9 years. But even then, you know, with modern technology, they could, you know.
Well, sure, but that's expensive to consistently down age someone through episode after episode
Yeah,
after
but if you're not
episode.
down aging them by, 20, 30 years like you did with Patrick Stewart and X-Men, you know.
I
But,
know.
well, there's the Carrie Lake filter now. He's Vaseline the fuck out of the camera. No, but I just don't think, I don't understand the casting, of Mary and John. It just every time I see them, I just go, this isn't right. It's wrong. It's just so if it's I'm struggling to love the show as much as I should love it because I am a major Supernatural fan. So much so that in my novel Angels of Mercy, my boys, my main characters, are huge Supernatural fans. They even drive the same fucking car that is in Supernatural because one of the boys is really obsessed with and he has the money to buy it and convert it and make it look exactly like the one in Supernatural. So it's just uh, I struggle really hard with some of the elements that were big, and I guess they're developing it, but
Right.
some of the men of letters, which
Hmm.
was a big factor in Supernatural. In this one, it's like they're there, but kind
They're
of as a
missing.
Scooby-Doo hangout. Not
Right.
really, it's like they haven't figured out what they're doing yet. And and
Right.
and then I thought, okay, back off. Supernatural, had to start from somewhere. Then I went and watched the first season. I'm like, no, they actually had their shit together pretty goddamn early.
Hmm.
I mean, I was and then I thought, well, is it not produced by the same? But I know Jensen is now one of the executive producers. But no,
Hmm.
McGee is there, and he was one of the originals. I mean, Eric Kripke, who was the one who came up with the idea. I don't know that he's necessarily involved on any high level, but it's got some of the same people from that universe. So it's like,
Right.
okay, guys, did we like forget what the fuck we were doing only like 3 years ago? I mean, so I'm struggling a little bit. I do like the queer character of Carlos.
Hmm.
I like that he's unapologetic. I like that he's rooted in really fleshing out his groovy psychedelic hippie boy that, you know, very carefree and, um, again, I don't know if you noticed it, but my comment earlier when we were doing the horror reviews with Michael,
Hmm.
it, there's just times when he ekes into too much modernism.
Yeah.
And I just kind of want to say, bring it back, boy, bring it back. But I don't know that any of the people surrounding it grew up in that era. So I'm like, are we all Googling shit and trying to just, you know what I mean?
Yo.
Like I said, I like the premise. I really want to love the show. I'm struggling. I have to admit, I'm struggling. I kind of want to grab Jensen and go, what the fuck were you thinking?
Well,
You needed, there was a big fallout, not a big fallout, but the boys, Jared and Jensen, who played the two brothers, Jared felt a little left out when Jensen started developing this as something to do beyond Supernatural when it ended. And so he pitched it and they were working it out. And he never really included Jared in any of those conversations. So when Jared found out, it was at a convention.
ooh.
And so it kind of came out and he had no knowledge of it. And so, yeah. So it became kind of a thing for a little while. They did settle it. They had a long conversation. They settled it and everything. And Jensen said, well, you know, I knew you were going on to do Walker, so I didn't want to assume anything. So I just went ahead and did this, you know, developed to do something on my own. And so they've settled it. It's not a thing anymore, but it's still, I think it's still playing a factor in the series. I like that the cast is diverse. We've got an Indian, you know, character in Latika, Lottie, as they call her. Ada, who's a black woman. So, you know, and then you
And
have
she's
Carlos.
the smartest person on the crew, which I love. She's the
Yeah.
academic.
Yeah. And excuse you, Missy. It's still over there. Anyways,
So-
for people listening, my cat just walked in front of the camera.
I just want to jump back to something you were saying that by episode 2, I had decided to let go of a lot of my previous show feelings,
Canon.
and yeah, and I just tried to enjoy this as a new story because you're right. By episode 2, I was like, I could either go crazy, or I could sit back and see if this is enjoyable on its own.
Yeah, and then I'm looking at the picture of Meg Donnelly, who plays Mary Campbell, and she has lovely shaped eyebrows, and yet in this one, she's Brooke Shields on steroids, and I'm like, oh, girl, what the fuck happened? Did you like paste those things on? I now that every time I see her, I think of Tony Orlando's mustache, and I know that's dating the shit out of me, but it's just they're these big bushy things, and I'm like, how is it that your husband to be has better shaped eyebrows than you do? What the hell's going on here? And I'm looking at her picture on IMDb. No, them things are nicely plucked. And I'm like, was this a character choice? Because it's stupid. Women were more painted in that era than they weren't. Eyebrow pencils were a thing.
They were, but maybe they're trying to portray her character as someone who's like, I don't have time for that shit. I have monsters to slay.
I guess.
She's the most dedicated slayer so far, hands down.
Yeah.
I should say hunter, not slayer. That's a
Buffy
Hunter reference.
But... Let's not cross universes. All right.
Should we get to our ratings?
Yeah, get to our numbers. What do you have?
Mine are pretty standard across the board. I do find it enjoyable overall. It's just not knock your socks off enjoyable. So pretty much a board. Sound lighting score, I actually gave it a 4.5 because I do love the fact that they get to play with some original music, and the characters kept up the theme of when they gave a fake name, it was from a band member of some song.
Which is where it originates, and you see the boys do it in the original show. So yeah.
Yep. That was a nice throwback. Queer themes presented, I did drop down to a 3 because while I love Carlos, and I love the fact that he's really faceted in that he has a military background, but he's now kind of hippie, but the hippie we discovered is a cover for some of the trauma. Fascinating, but we've only got the one example so far. So only a 3.
So far.
But I'm hoping it gets better. So my personal overall is a 4.
Okay. Yeah, like you, I'm going to give it 4s across the board. And those 4s are hopeful 4s. I want to love it as much as Supernatural, which for me, if we did them, it would be 5s across the board for Supernatural. So, you know, if you're a queer fan of horror and stuff, Supernatural is an obvious choice to watch. It's very well done. But I'm just a little bit disappointed in some of the casting. it's like I don't think the production company and the casting director took a look at what they had done. I mean, I'm sure there are tons of other, and it's really weird too. I have to add, there's one more thing. Drake Roger, who plays John Winchester, looks a lot like a friend of mine. So I get thrown out of the show every now and then when he does a certain expression. I just go, "Oh my God, that's Chuck." Oh, like, you know, I was mentioning to my husband, and he looked at me and he goes, "Yeah, I can see it." You know, so yeah, so there's that element that one of the actors looks like a friend of mine, and it's like, what are you doing in here? Kind of thing. Anyways, so yeah, my overall is going to be a 4-2. I want it to be more, but I'm being generous. Probably deserves more, like a 3.5, but I'm going to give it the 4 with a big hope that one, Paramount picks it up so we have more, and 2, that the writer's room starts to really settle. I don't know. The one drawback I have in the writing, major drawback I have in the writing, is that they haven't figured out if they want to be a Monster of the Week show, right, or if they want to do a long arc. Now, I think they should follow the Supernatural formula, where it was Monster of the Week to establish the universe and to establish all the canon stuff that they have to do. That's a lot.
It is.
For a show that ran 15 years. You've got a lot of backstory canon that needs establishing. And I think that's the biggest problem of the show, is that they're not fully paying attention to canon. And that kind of bothers me. And that's what gives me pause for thought. I think it's worth your investment to watch. But I think Vance's, position on it is completely the smartest move. As my cat keeps running in front of the camera, and now she's climbing on the chair behind me. There's no editing you out of this one, is there, Missy?
Nope.
That's Taki, everybody. And for those who aren't able to see that, hey, guess what? You can just go to our YouTube channel, subscribe, and you can see Taki make her weird appearances and run a tail underneath my nose as she goes by. Anyways, so I say invest your time in it, but do it from Vance's perspective. If you're a Supernatural fan, kind of put what you know on hold and just let the story evolve. I think it is interesting that they have the mom involved, which we never really had on John's side. And I kind of like her. So
I like her.
She's kind of like, yeah, no, we're not doing that. Like the whole thing with the vase and the God of War. Oh, look how beautiful it is. It's amazing that someone like, and then she knocks it down. She goes, yeah, we don't have time for our poetic irony.
Well, the beauty of her character, I know we're trying to move on. The beauty of her character is she had been married to a hunter. She knew he was a hunter. She knows what her son's getting into. She does not have time for the bullshit. Right.
She's done. Her son's in the balance, so she's not playing. Mama Bear ain't playing. She's like, fuck this shit.
Yep.
So, yeah.
So, what do you on about this?
Okay, so I have a couple of things that I think are worth mentioning. One, I was gonna start off with my laugh, giggle, fun gay boy moment, but I'm gonna hold off on that it's the third in my list now. First, I want to say, isn't it wonderful how fast Elon has crashed and burned in Twitter land?
The best
comment, that big old thing. Let this sink in. Now, bitch, the public just done picked it up and whacked you with that thing. I mean, I'm upset that the employees are suffering because of it, but at the same time,
the best comment I've seen so far is, would Elon please just buy the Republican Party so he can run them into the ground too?
Yeah. Amen. Amen. But there is a poetic justice in all of this playing out the way it is. And to be quite honest, while I don't mind Twitter from watching what political people are saying back and forth, so you keep kind of a pulse on what's going on in Washington and stuff.
Hmm.
or even around the world because I follow Ukrainian people now. But uh, I don't need the negativity. I have been
Right.
so much happier not doom scrolling every single day. And even Nicole Wallace on MSNBC, she had somebody on and they were talking about it, and she said, well, or no, wait, I think it was Katie Turner, not Nicole. You said, I'm tired of doom scrolling. Can we just stop doing it all? Can it just end? The way Meta's going, doom scrolling days may be coming to an end anyway. So, yeah. So Elon Musk is one. DaVinci Resolve just put out a new update, and I know that people are going, "What the fuck is that?" It is the editing software I use to edit this program, and this is supposed to be a minor update because it was version 18 came out like half a year ago, and now 18.1, so it's the 0.1 minor upgrade. Child, so many new things are in place now. They have a neural engine, so I can do sound editing and sound sculpting in ways that you had to buy a lot of plugins that were very expensive to do. Now it's built in. This version is just making my life so much easier. I have lots to learn, but I know in learning it, I will become so much faster in what I'm doing. So kudos to Blackmagic Design for actually coming up with this version of software. If you are a YouTuber or want to be a YouTuber, I highly suggest you check out Blackmagic. It is free. There is a free version that is pretty well fleshed out. There are some elements that you only get with the paid version, but it's a one-time payment and you get it for a lifetime. So just putting it out there. That was also a big one on mine. And then I'm also on about the salty tears of the GOP snowflakes. There is a wonderful, wonderful short video. It's 3 minutes and 6 seconds long, but it will make you smile. You just have to watch it. Just save it in your playlist on YouTube because anytime you need a smile, it's hysterical. They have on the Young Turks channel a 3 minute video of hour by hour meltdown of Fox News broadcasting the election night. Oh my! And they put it to the Mountain King classical piece. Oh my God! It's so fucking hysterical to watch. Just the mental hoop jumping and the explanations and the near tears moments as because they show it per hour. So like the very beginning, then the first hour, then the second hour, it just goes and crashes into the dumpster. Oh my God, it is so brilliant. It's my happy place now. Whenever I need a
Nice.
little giggle, I go there and watch that all over again. Anyways, and then my final one, what I'm on about, Jason Momoa came on Jimmy Kimmel and did the full-on Native Hawaiian thing and exposed his ass to the entire world because of the outfit he was wearing, which was traditional, was completely traditional. And the man brought cakes. That's all I'm going to say. Gay boys around the world, and I know because I've seen the YouTube videos, gay boys around the world screamed when he turned around and everybody went, "Woo!"
Wow.
So that's what I'm on about this week. You?
I was recently asked to join a role playing game, and so I kind of took a look at the genre and where it has gone because historically role playing games are very focused on horny white boys.
Yeah.
And so I kind of had left them for a while, but I will say that D&D has come a long way. One of their top designers came out. They've started to include things. They've included sensitivity readers, and then they botched something big time and released something horrific. And so they've actually put a new process in place to catch those before they happen. But the one I'm actually on about was the one I was invited to join. Scion was originally a game inspired by Neil Gaiman's American Gods, originally published by White Wolf Publishing. You play the son or daughter or child of a deity, trying to earn your own legend and work your way up through heroism. Cool concept. Recently purchased by Onyx Path Publishing, which is wonderfully queer and diverse, and they have rethought everything. They looked at the Greek gods and went, you know what? Most of these gods are polyamorous, so we're going to put
Right.
that right in their descriptions. And yeah, I mean, Zeus, Hera, they all have same-sex lovers, opposite-sex lovers, bisexual lovers. It's all baked into the game now. Loki is fully non-gender, non-binary. they them pronouns, all of it. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. I'm reading this going, oh my God, this is the most
Done right.
inclusive and done properly game I have seen in decades. So while there's not a lot out for it in terms of external support, like virtual tabletops and stuff like that, because it is new and it's fairly grassroots, I am super impressed just at the rethinking of looking at actual legend and saying, no, wait, this was not a straight deity.
That's not how this is done. That's not how any of this is done.
Right, right. And I was reading through some of their credits and everything, and they've specifically invited people of different cultures to come and help write the deities for those cultures. So, like the Hindu gods actually have a team of writers from India writing those gods and
Good,
making sure it's done well and properly. I'm like, holy crap. This has
good.
come a long way since the last time I looked
Yeah,
at a role-playing game.
yeah.
So, you know what? If you're looking to get back to storytelling with your friends, and that's what I love about role-playing games, is it's you and your friends telling a communal story that is all yours. It's not watching somebody else's story on a screen. It's your story. Give these guys a look because it's impressive.
Amen. All right.
Who won your
So who
week?
won? Oh,
Now I'm gonna go.
well, you.
I'm gonna go last because of your what you're on about.
Okay. So my who won the week. Um, I've had my own cancer journey, and I am still Ned. Knock on whatever this is. I don't know if it's pressed cardboard or whatever, but um, Ned means no evidence of disease. So I'm a survivor as it stands right now. You never know. So as a cancer patient, you learn your mortality is always down the road. We all know it, but for cancer patients, we actually live further down that road than most people. My husband was diagnosed with leukemia after I came out of my journey and kind of been in the status. So I've not talked about it a lot. I've not been on social media a lot. This is why I left social media by and large, with the exception of YouTube, what we're doing here on YouTube. And it's been tough. It's been tough with my husband seeing this thing take over him, and knowing there was really nothing you can do about it until this oncologist we have now who came up with the idea of him taking this pill form uh, drug that is new, and it's called Calquence. And he took it and for the first month, and it was kind of rough the very first month because it just really battered the shit out of him. He was taking it twice a day, once every 12 hours. And then they decided, let's stop taking it twice a day, just take it once a day. So he takes it in the morning, for the day. And so they've kind of titrated it down from that perspective. And we went and did a set of labs after the first month of being on it, which is when things start to even out from being on the drug. And this might be a maintenance drug. So this is something he'll have to take for the rest of his life, possibly. But we did his blood work, and his numbers were so good that his oncologist said, basically, you're in remission right now, which blew our minds. He said, and even he said, he goes, I've not seen anyone respond to it this fast like you have. So kudos to new medicine, new science. I think the mRNA stuff we did for COVID, I think we're making leaps and bounds in areas. And I do feel that cancer in and of itself is going to be a thing of the past within the next 5 to 10 years. I think we're really on the cusp of that. If anything, I told my husband, I said, well, if you have to take this as a maintenance drug, so be it. If anything, it buys you time until they find out a way to really take it out. So I think that's where people need to consider because one of the biggest struggles as a cancer patient is you have to decide quality of life over whatever the drugs fallout is. And so there's that balance. You have to figure out, what are you really going for? And because these drugs are very harsh. And I think in something like this, it becomes an issue of, if this is working so well, better to endure it, because if it is working so well and keeping things down and keeping you in remission or keeping you healthy enough, they may find something that will take it out completely. So it's a different kind of playing field than I think people had 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Hmm.
Now it's a much different landscape. So just want to say that bravo to Calquence. It's not a cheap drug. This drug is $15,000 a month, and which is like $500 a pill. And so it's not cheap, but luckily Medicare covers it as long as it was pre-approved, and our oncologist got in there and got it pre-approved. So yay. This is why voting for Dems, who are finally going after big pharma, this is why we did that. This is why we fought for it, and this is why we pushed it through. And thank God we have the Senate. Hopefully we'll be close enough in the House that they're not going to have a whole lot of play to do stuff, for fear of they're having an internal collapse, because they're infighting like crazy. The GOP is not in a stable environment. There's a firing squad going on inside both sides of the House. I mean, even Mitch McConnell's being questioned of whether he will be minority leader, because everything is so effed up. So that's who won my week. Calquence, the drug for people with leukemia.
Bravo. My weekly win ties beautifully to your first and third, what you're on about. And as you were reading them, I got happier and happier. One of my biggest problems with social media is that it happens so fast. The negative side and what it does to society and our emotional inability to handle it, because it came at us so fast, is far greater. The damage it does is far greater than its potential of bringing people together. And this week I saw the article that the universities of Cambridge and Bristol have started to focus on this, and they specifically have focused on the misinformation campaigns that are going on. And they reached out to Google and said, hey, are you willing to help us with this? And Google said, yes, we are. So they've started creating 90-second ads that they're placing on YouTube before other videos that highlight manipulation techniques and scapegoating and just deliberate incoherence, so that when you're aware of these things and then you see a video that has it, you're like, oh, hey, that's one of those techniques. And it's showing real promise. So more money has been put into it. It's called the Inoculation Science Project. And I hope it helps educate people about social media, how it's used against them, how it's used to drive people apart, so that the potential for social media can actually come around and finally help bring us all. That's who won my week.
Bravo. Well done. All right.
So, any final words of wisdom?
No. It's all poured out, even though I've got an ear thing in my ear.
All right then.
Buy our merch. Buy our merch. That'll be my thing for this week. Buy our merch.
Awesome.
Help
Store
keep
link.
the lights on.
He'll put the store link wherever. All right, folks, written on the just produced by Road Ravens Media. For our disclaimers, our links to social media, our listen stations, or to sign up as a guest, visit www.roadpodcast.com. If you enjoy learning about new artists or revisiting past artists like R.L. Merrill, who came and joined us today, like, subscribe so you get the alerts for new episodes. Follow us on YouTube and you'll automatically get them. Tune in next week for your queer media fix.
Closing time. The bums rush in melody, dear.